So to introduce you to the first unit for this class, I'd like to read a few pages from our textbook from the chapter on voting theory. So here we go. I hope you enjoy the reading. Listen carefully, and throughout this reading, I'll ask some extra credit questions. And if you send me the answers to these questions via Blackboard, Collaborate, Message, I will give you 5 points towards exam 1. So here we go. The mathematics of elections. The paradoxes of democracy. Whether we like it or not, we are all affected by the outcomes of elections. Isn't that the truth? Our president, senators, governors, and mayors make decisions that impact our lives in significant ways, and they all get to be in that position because an election made it possible. But elections touch our lives not just in politics. The Academy Awards, American Idol, Heisman trophies, football rankings, they are all decided by means of an election. Even something as simple as deciding where to go for dinner might require a mini election. It does in our house. Here's a woman who's very happy that she's voted. The little red ink on her finger indicates that she's voted. Here's your first extra credit question. Can you tell me what country this election is taking place, or what country this is from? For this election, send me a message in Blackboard and I'll give you extra credit. The first 3 people who send the correct answer will get the extra credit. But let's go on. We have elections because we don't all think alike. Isn't that the truth? Since we cannot all have things our way, we vote. But voting is only the first half of the story, the one we are most familiar with. As playwright Tom Stuppard suggests, it's the second half of the story, the counting, that is at the heart of the democratic process. How do we sift through the many choices of individual voters to find the collective choice of the group? More important, how well does the process work? Is the process always fair? Answering these questions and explaining a few of the many intricacies and subtleties of voting theory are the purposes of this chapter and the purpose of our first unit. But wait just a second. Voting theory? Why do we need a fancy theory to figure out how to count the votes? It all sounds pretty simple. We have an election, we count the ballots. Based on that count, we decide the outcome of the election in a consistent and fair manner. Surely there must be a reasonable way to accomplish this. Surprisingly, there isn't. In the late 1940s, the American economist Kenneth Arrow discovered a remarkable fact. For elections involving 3 or more people, there is no consistently fair democratic method for choosing a winner. In fact, Arrow demonstrated that a method for determining election results that is always fair is a mathematical impossibility. This fact is the most famous theory in voting theory, and it's known as the Arrow's impossibility theorem. And I'll remind you, this applies to elections where there's 3 or more candidates. So this chapter is organized as follows. We're going to start with a general discussion of elections and ballots. And this discussion will provide the backdrop for the remaining sections of this chapter, where we will explore 4 of the most commonly used voting methods. And that's what we're going to do in our Unit 2. Hey, here's another picture of somebody winning the Heisman Trophy. Do you know who this person is? If you do, send me a message in Blackboard and I'll give you 5 points toward exam 1. The first 3 people to do so correctly will get those points. But let's go on. The basic elements of an election. Big or small, important or trivial, all elections share a set of common elements. First of all, the candidates. The purpose of an election is to choose from a set of candidates or alternatives. Typically, the word candidate is used for people and the word alternatives is used for other things like movies, football teams, pizza toppings. But it is acceptable to use the 2 terms interchangeably. In the case of a generic choice, we will use the term candidate throughout this course, even though we might be talking about things that we're choosing from. The second important element, the voters. These are the people who get a say in the outcome of the election. In most democratic elections, the presumption is that all voters have an equal say, and we will assume that to be the case throughout this chapter and throughout our course. The ballots. A ballot is a device by means of which a voter gets to express his or her opinion of the candidates. The most common type is a paper ballot, but a voice vote, a text vote, or a phone call can also serve as a ballot in some cases. There are many different forms of ballots that can be used in an election, And in the figures below, they show an example of a single choice ballot. I'm going to skip here, preference ballot, a truncated preference ballot. So I want to zoom in and look at these for just a moment here. So here's an example of a single choice ballot where you pick your choice. Somebody here has voted for Taylor Swift. Here's an example of a preference ballot, and these are the kind of ballots that we're going to be working with most as we study elections. And people are ranking their choices first, second, third, or fourth. This is also a preference ballot, just written a different way. And this is a preference ballot where people only make 3 choices. So we'll be using those or looking at preference ballots a lot. Okay, let's kind of go on. So I'm going to skip down here and talk about voting methods. We're going to look at 4 voting methods, and the textbook goes on to say the final piece of the puzzle is the method that we use to tabulate the ballots and produce the outcome. This is the most interesting and complicated part of the story, but we won't dwell on this topic here. We will discuss voting methods throughout the chapter and throughout this unit in our course. It is now time to illustrate and clarify the above concepts with some examples. We will start with a simple example of a fictitious election. This is an important example, and we will revisit it many times through the chapter. We may not see this example so much during our class, but it is used a lot in this chapter. So here's the example. The Math Appreciation Society is a student club dedicated to an unsung but worthy cause, that of fostering the enjoyment and appreciation of mathematics among college students. The MAS Club chapter at Tasmania State University is holding an annual election for the club president, and there are 4 candidates running: Alicia, Boris, Carmen, and Dave, which are called ABCD for short. Every member of the club is eligible to vote, and the vote takes place in the form of a preference ballot. Each voter is asked to rank each of the 4 candidates in order of preference. There are 37 voters who submit their ballots, and the 37 preference ballots are shown below. So let's take a look at these. And as we can see, there's a ballot for all the voters, so there's 37 of these, and in each ballot we can see how that voter has ranked the candidates. So this voter put A first, B second, C, and then D. But this voter put B first, Boris first, then Dave, then Carmen, then Alicia, and so forth. This person here put Carmen first, then Boris, then Doris, then Alicia. So we have all of the ballots here. I wonder who the winner is. Can you tell who the winner is? It would take some time to look through all these ballots to see. Who do you think might be the winner? But let's kind of go on and see what they say here. Let's go on to the next page. So we saw in that last election that they were looking just for the president. It could have been in that election that the 4 candidates were ranked in order so that one might be president, one might be treasurer, or third place might be something else. So let's go on. Now let's look at another election. The Academy Awards, also known as the Oscars, are given out each year by the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences for Best Picture, Best Actress, Best Actor, Best Director, and many other lesser categories. The election process is not the same for all awards. So for the sake of simplicity, we will just discuss the selection of Best Picture. The voters in this election are all the eligible members of the Academy, approximately 6,000 voters. After a complicated preliminary round, 10 films are selected as the nominees. They are our candidates. Each voter is asked to submit a preference ballot of the 10 candidates. There is only one winner, with the winner decided by voting method called plurality with elimination that we're going to talk about later. The part with which people are most familiar with comes after the ballots are submitted and tabulated, the annual Academy Award ceremony held each year in late February. How many viewers realize that behind one of the most extravagant and glamorous events in pop culture lies an election? Most of you probably knew there's an election. The Heisman Trophy Award, how does that election work? Well, the Heisman Memorial Trophy Award is given annually to the most outstanding player in collegiate football. The Heisman, as it is usually known, is not only a very prestigious award, but also very controversial, with so many players playing so many different positions, how do you determine who is the most outstanding? In theory, any football player in the division of college is a potential candidate for the award. In practice, the real candidates are players from Division I programs and almost always in the glamorous position quarterback or running back. There are approximately 930 voters. The voters are members of the media, plus all past Heisman Trophy winners still living, plus one vote from the public as determined by a survey. Each voter submits a truncated preference ballot. Now listen to this. The first place vote is worth 3 points. The second place is worth 2 points. The third place is worth 1 point. The candidate with the most total votes, points at the end is the one who's awarded the Heisman Trophy. So this election works a little bit different. But let's go on. Oh, what about those American Idol elections? The single most watched program in history of American television is American Idol, a singing competition for individuals. Each year, the winner of American Idol gets a big record contract, and many past winners have gone on to become famous artists. While there is a lot at stake in the big reward of winning, American Idol is not a winner-only competition. There is indeed a ranking of all the finalists. In fact, some non-winners have gone on to become great recording artists of their own, as you know. The 12, sometimes 13 candidates who reach the final rounds of the competition compete in a weekly televised show. During and immediately after each weekly show, the voters cast their votes. How do they cast them? The candidates with the fewest number of votes gets eliminated from the competition, and the following week the process starts all over again. And who are the voters responsible for deciding the fate of these candidates? Anyone and everyone, you, me, everyone can vote. Aunt Betsy are all potential voters. All one has to do is vote for a particular candidate or text or call a toll-free number for that specific candidate. American Idol voting is an example of democracy run amok. You can vote for a candidate even if you've never heard her sing, and you can vote as many times as you want. I wonder if that's fair. So in any case, we've had an introduction to different type of elections here, and we will explore different voting methods in this chapter. So remember the extra credit questions that I put out there, and you'll have a little quiz on this reading in your next activity. Okay, bye-bye.